Hello and welcome. We are Group 1, and this is our presentation on AP Government Chapters 8 through 9. Our central question is, give an overview of the key phases of political party development in the United States. How did the framers envision electoral participation in government? How has this been realized? And we'll make sure to be certain to demonstrate where realignments have occurred and the reasons why, and to evaluate in detail what disalignment entails and assess where it has occurred. Some examples of political party developments in the United States are the Federalists and Jeffersonians, the Democrats and Whigs, the Republicans, the New Deal Coalition, and the present Republican Southern Strategy. The Federalist Party is America's first major political party. The Jeffersonians took over as the next major political party and became known as the Democratic Republican Party. General and former President Andrew Jackson and his party eventually split with the Democratic Republican Party to become the Democratic Party, which appealed to the masses rather than elitism. Rather, opposition became ideal, and this is where the Whig Party came in. Their views opposed the Democratic Party. The Republican Party came into the playing field as an anti-slavery party and elected Abraham Lincoln, which ignited this Civil War. The Republican Party thrived, and the Democrats controlled the South. The election of 1896 was dubbed the bitterest rival in American electoral history, as the Democrats favored free silver, which is to devaluate money and help debtors. The Republicans favored the gold standard, industrialization, and high tariffs to protect American goods. The Republican ruled as the major party until the Great Depression of the 1930s. Because of the Great Depression, many groups and Democrats formed the New Deal Coalition in favor of FDR's promise of a New Deal. This made the Democrats the majority party. When Republican Richard Nixon became president, he emphasized his support to win Southern conservatives. Before, Democrats held the majority in the South, but once Nixon became president, the Republicans became the majority in the South. We define electoral participation as a person involving themselves in different elections. It is how a person is able to use their vote to influence any election results, and voter turnout is especially a well-documented example of electoral participation. The amount of eligible voters involving themselves in electoral participation varies among different countries. It also depends on multiple of different factors to create/increase or decrease in voter participation. Socioeconomic status, gender, and age are the main factors of this. However, other factors may include the country's electoral system, different social parties or groupings voters align themselves with, voters' access to information, and much, much more. For example, a person who has a lower socioeconomic status may participate less in voting, as they aren't able to access the proper resources, such as a good education, to help them gather the tools they need in order to prepare to vote. This is significant because voting allows citizens to vote for leaders who stand for their ideals. If there is low voter turnout because of the inequalities or different factors, then it is not an accurate representation of electoral results. Who are the framers? The framers were the 70 delegates appointed by the states to attend the Constitutional Convention. Although only 55 attended, only 39 of them actually signed the Constitution. The words framer and founding fathers are thrown around in our modern world, although I believe it is clear that we sort of differentiate them to make it easier for us. We define framers as those who helped craft the Constitution at the convention, while founding father refers to those who had a large role to play in the development of American ideals of independence, nationhood, and liberty. Think George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Madison, and Adams as founding fathers, while everyone else you could throw in with the framers. How and why are the framers important? For one, the Constitution is the longest written government charter in human history, and it was revolutionary for its time, giving power to the people in a sea of autocrats and monarchies from Europe to Asia. The ideas of the framers, either through the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, has influenced people all over the world, most obviously in the French, Haitian, and Latin American revolutions, and many other government charters that either draw inspiration from or directly copy from the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution is formed around the central idea of limited power. The framers saw how absolute power corrupts absolutely, and actively sought to make sure the central government has as little power as possible, and instead make sure the power lies in the people. Each of the framers had different backgrounds, from plantation owners to businessmen to inventors, but their differences they put aside in order to frame the Constitution. The differences of the framers stand as a testament that people of different ideas can and will work together to create something truly unique and beneficial for humanity as a whole.
The right to vote is a significant article in the Constitution. James Madison is a framer who describes it as an important aspect of the government as well as an aspect that needs to be regulated delicately. The framers viewed electoral participation as a crucial right to property owners. In the Constitution, however, the framers leaves voting specifics to each individual states. This is seen when it mentions leaving state legislatures the duty of describing how congressional elections are held. The framers also believe in the creation of the Electoral College. Their initial reasoning was that they wanted those who were educated to choose the president, as they did not trust the general population. The Electoral College is now the alternative to electing a president by Congress or popular vote. It essentially gives states the option to elect a number of representatives that is equal to its number of senators. The elector is able to cast one electoral vote in the general election. Realignment in politics is defined as the major shift in one or two political parties. This is usually when a presiding party is overtaken by a new party as the previous one has lost its power, while de-alignment is when a political party shifts its belief and partisan affiliation. No party takes over, it is just a shift in affiliation. Realignment may occur due to significant historical events or because of critical elections. De-alignment may occur as people grow to identify as independents, choosing their candidates on their own personal beliefs or traits. In the 1850s, the debate about slavery raged on. Two parties were the main contenders in the upcoming election. The Republicans were anti-slavery, and the Democrats were pro-slavery. The Republicans gained enough support to elect Lincoln, which started the Civil War. Because of the war, people were forced to choose which party they supported. It was really impossible to avoid, and so many ended up siding with either the North or the South, which is why it's considered a realigning election in time and period. Then in the election of 1896, the Democrats wanted to devalue the currency to support debtors, while the Republicans wanted industrialization to support the banks and to support the industrialized working class. Now, the division and the animosity in this election was so high that it's considered a realigning election because of how many people came out in direct support of either party. Now, post-Depression, the Democrats took power, and Roosevelt brought in the New Deal, which provided support to many Americans who had been affected by the Great Depression. Because of this, many new voters turned out in the polls to support him, which fueled the Democratic Party for years, and realignment was brought in because many of these new voters and first-time voters were siding with the Democrats for maybe the first time. Now, after the Dixiecrats split from the Democrats in the 1950s, they remained a small party, mainly in the South, until Nixon came around and made the Republican Party the Law and Order Party, which greatly interested the members of the Dixiecrat Party. It was continued with Reagan, who ran on a values platform talking about religion and traditional values, which brought in the majority of the South and completed the realignment, with the South returning to the Republican Party. After Roosevelt loses the Republican nomination, he forms a progressive party. This party attracts many working-class Americans because of their support of government regulation and business to support the workers. These working-class voters de-align from the Republican Party and shift their support to the progressives. Now, many people in the South were Democrats because they believed in small government and states' rights. They would stay with the Democratic Party even during the New Deal because it provided jobs and support that many people needed post-Depression. The South would begin to de-align from the Democrats in the 1950s as they began to become more involved in civil rights. Now, not all, but many in the South were members of the KKK and wanted no part in the new Democratic Party's platform of pro-civil rights for African Americans, so they formed the Dixiecrat Party, which de-aligned them from the Democratic Party.